Bonjour à tous. Merci de nous rejoindre pour le Border Forum deuxième édition.
Hello, welcome to the second edition of the Border Forum. As I was saying to you, this is a face-to-face meeting for a specific meeting in an extremely special year. We have to say this, still under coronavirus, the war in Ukraine, and questioning about borders and indeed on cross-border cooperation. But cross-border countries have no, there was an interruption from the jingle. But cross-border countries have long time been considered as laboratories for European integration after 35 years of free movement in the Schengen program, supporting coordinating these countries, platforms, European platforms, and cross-border cooperation. So what do we want to do about cross-border cooperation? We are going to address that in this forum. The ESPN program as well. I think we have people from all of these organizations here. Res Publica and Borders in Globalization. There will be several thematic roundtables with high-level guests to answer our questions. So your questions, you can ask them in the room, or you can also ask them on Slido on your smartphone. The code is hashtag Borders Forum. That should display on the screen. Border Forum, hashtag Border Forum. And obviously this event is being interpreted. FR number 1. Those who need to adjust their sets. English channel 2, German channel 3, Spanish channel 4, and Italian channel 5. So I would like to start by inviting you to hear a word about this Border Forum initiative. Christian Dupessey, president of MOT, is going to come and join us. And this cross-border mission, this operation, which is dedicated to supporting cross-border cooperation. You are also Mayor of Annemasse, and I am inviting you to speak to us now. First of all, welcome to everybody to this University City of Paris for this second edition of the Border Forum. Welcome to you in the room and indeed to those of you remotely, because you know we have got a hybrid of this situation. But I have to say, what a pleasure it is to be together physically, to discuss, together and to have this necessary contact, this necessarily conviviality, which will enable us to go further. I remember the first forum, the first video forum, I had been elected 2 months earlier, and I was delighted to meet everybody during the session. A very physical session which we had here, but unfortunately we had to cancel. We had to put the forum into video conference mode, and that was one of the first decisions I had to take as president of the MOT. So you will understand why I am delighted to be with you here together in this magnificent room. Of course, thank you first of all to our partners and the representatives in this room. Thanks to the European Commission, the Committee of the Council of the Regions, who has been with us since the first edition, and the National Agency for Territorial Cohesion, and also for the European territory groups, and our friend Victor, who is directing this program. Thank you also to our media partner, France Media Monde, along with us to share the voice of our cross-border regions. And I would like once again to thank Caroline for her support, her commitment alongside us. Thank you, Res Publica, the Big Borders Network, who you will discover later if you do not know them during these 2 days. And finally, I would like to greet most especially our two partners from the Cross-Border Citizens Alliance, Caroline Halpen, thank her for being among us, and Zsuzsanna Fejes, President of CESCI, who is also our partner. Thank you, Madam President, for being here with us. I would also, at the end of my opening speech, I will invite them to come and speak to us about the actions that we will be carrying out together. And I would also like to apologize I would like to apologize for the government members who cannot be with us because of the elections this weekend. We are sorry about this, but we can understand that these results may, of course, also be of interest to us, and I will get back to that shortly. We have, during our event, we got a label from the French presidency of the European Union, a sign that cross-border territories are at the heart of the national priorities and European priorities for France for this new mandate. That is a subject which we will strengthen. Remember that this French presidency, which will end at the end of the month, was based on three words, three key words, which we will rediscover during the presentations during these 2 days. Restart, power and partnership. I would think that we have got a lot to say about this. The first edition of the Borders Forum in November 2020 should have been held here, and we had to cancel it, as I have already said. And this was cancelled because of the health crisis, which has receded, at least from the headlines at the moment. But war has come back to Europe's doors, Europe's gateway. This is the worst crisis since the end of the Second World War, and since we are in this room, I would like to state a wish for the wish that the founders of Europe can guide us during this meeting over these 2 days. And President Macron recently invited us to consider that in a recent speech. I would also like to greet and salute the responsiveness of Europe to the situation in Ukraine, their solidarity that they have expressed, which was supported by strong actions in defense terms. Jean Monnet said that Europe will be built out of crises and will be the sum of the solutions given to these crises. And with the war in Ukraine, a serious crisis, I think that Europe, a Europe of defense, a Europe which looks internationally, has really leapt forwards. And since crises are following on from each other, we will need to find solutions if we wish to be faithful to Jean Monnet's words. A financial crisis, a security crisis, health crisis, a military crisis today, a democratic crisis, not just these crises having an impact on people and territories, but also they can turn us away what from should bring us together across borders, which is the environmental transition, which is today an element at the heart of our policies and must be at the heart of our policies. And what is worse, these crises could bring back borders in politics and public opinion. This could have an impact if it means rejecting others, rejecting people living in neighboring countries. This is something fundamental. And when we talk about moving populations, there are more than 100,000 people, 100 million people who traveled in 2021. That is why across borders, Euroscepticism is shown most strongly. We have just finished an electoral period in France with presidential and parliamentary elections. And I was struck by a specific result, which is those territories which are the most concerned by cross-border topics, French border territories, which live Europe on a daily basis, it is in those regions that abstention was strongest. I know that clearly because in my own city, we had record abstention levels, more than 75% abstention levels in the last parliamentary election. That needs to be taken into account. But beyond that, let me say this with a very clear political will. Over the 50 constituencies along the borders in France, across the borders, 10 were won by the Rassemblement National, the National Rally. This is a higher proportion than if we look at the success of the Rassemblement National to the national scale. 10 constituencies on the borders. People voted freely. They voted for something which goes against their day-to-day life. This vote, which is a vote to turn in on themselves, a vote of concern, is a vote to turn away from others. People voted who like that. I can say this solemnly. If on the other side of the border the same thing happened, can you imagine the difficulties we would have to handle what is going to be at the heart of our discussions, what we call the conduits across the borders? So be careful. The feeling of belonging to Europe in the cross-border regions is not as clear as that. So we will need to work on this. France said this was a key word during our presidency, and we will not forget this, and it will continue. But what is also worrying and also forgotten by national authorities on either side of the borders is the lessons of the health crisis. The closures of borders demonstrated that this did not work. And we all said never again. States promised at the end of the health crisis to give a priority to cross-border investments to roll out the services which the inhabitants of these regions expected. But we have to say that when we note most of the recovery plans, and there are indeed recovery plans, forgot cross-border matters today. And this relaunch or this resilience concerns all regions. All regions need to have right to this, but do not forget that cross-border regions represent 30% of the European Union, and it is an immense site which needs to be supported. It is not sufficiently the case today. So this return of borders to the public debate can be salutary if we manage to rebuild the design, which I think during these 2 days is the desire of a new approach. We will not now be happy with simple cooperation across borders, which will collapse at the first crisis. We need to take advantage of these lessons of these crises. We need now to guarantee a respect for open borders in cross-border regions. As we look to revise the Schengen Code, we need to distinguish the close frontier from the frontier region where the requirements are not the same. The close border can sometimes protect us when there are conflicts which take place, like in Ukraine, but the region can protect us or give us the resources we need to respond to a climate crisis. Organization charts show this, that the regions are often associated with asylum, with migration. That's true, but they are part of a territory, because if the border is sometimes a shared line, it can also and must be a shared region. That is why we wonder in this second edition of the Borders Forum about resiliation or resilience. Let's be clear, we are at a crossroads, and the decisions we take today and tomorrow will decide what we want to do. With respect to the operational mission across the borders, you have understood we are refusing to resign ourselves. We now need to build cross-border places to live which are prosperous, resilient, supportive, and develop cross-border public services, committing on this scale to make the necessary changes to develop across borders, associating citizens on both sides of the borders is not a sinecure, but it is a demonstration of the route that we need to take together. In terms of methods, such prospects require experimentation, and we can experiment if possible across borders. We need to decentralize different public policies. That is the logic of the 3DS law in France, to build multi-level governance which is resilient across borders on models, for example, of cross-border cooperation committees in Aix-la-Chapelle, or more recently in Italy. So I would like to call upon the representatives of the states and institutions of Europe to ask, when will you finalize the site and remove obstacles to integration for cooperation that has already been started? When will we put in place in each capital? In France, we've been asking for this for years. When will we put in place interministerial coordination? When will states demonstrate together across each border at a European level in the service of cross-border territories? I will give you an example, but I won't go into more detail because I'll do that in the roundtables later. During the health crisis, remote working enabled many companies and their workers to continue their business activities. We think that it was 125,000 cross-border workers used this in France. Following the crisis, maintaining this arrangement is a good arrangement, uh, which balances the economy on both sides of the borders, but it requires a coordinated approach with authorities on both sides of the borders for fiscal reasons and other requirements across Europe. And it is across these requirements long-term solutions will need to be descended. But the aim is simple: to reconcile our individual desires and collective cross-border requirements. That will also give confidence in Europe back to citizens. And this is the Europe of day-to-day life, which we live in every day. Redefining the place of borders, we need borders which link us rather than cut us. We need borders which protect us, borders which unite us, and borders which can build the heart of Europe. In the French context, cross-border players are already asking to be heard in national councils proposed by President Macron or by the new government when it will be able to act, which I hope will take place soon. At a European level, Mott, Larfay and the CESCI have started an alliance for cross-border citizens with the Committee of the Council of the Regions in 2020 during the first Borders Forum. This enabled us to contribute to many European debates together, and we will continue, and our three structures will unite even more their strengths in the future to take part in these discussions, to make progress in ideas and public policies, and to demonstrate that cross-border regions are a source of prosperity. And I will soon ask Karl-Heinz Lambertz and Zsuzsanna to join us to introduce this subject. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. You are from more than 20 nationalities during this forum. It is now over to you for these 2 days. The European actors, locally and nationally, are listening to you. Seize this opportunity. Express your opinions, your expectations, your needs, your vision. We need a new cross-border narrative involving cross-border citizenship, a tangible symbol of European citizenship, with a sustainable project for new generations, a solidarity where we guarantee founding values, including peace, based on new models of governance suitable to a world of uncertainty which surrounds us. That is this Borders Forum work well. Thank you very much. So I will now call Madame Zsuzsanna Fejes and Mr. Karl-Heinz Lambertz. Please, could you come to join me? I will now hand over to them for a few moments. I'm doing your work. Thank you very much. I'll relax. Please come up onto the stage.
Dear Mr. President Dupessey and dear Mr. President Lambertz, dear our colleagues and friends, welcome to everybody. On behalf of CESCI, it's our privilege that today's signing ceremony is organized in the framework of the French presidency of the Council of the European Union. The European Union has always been the forerunner of all those initiatives moving forward mutual trust and peaceful coexistence of the European nations, the values of democracy and human rights. Today, more than 300 such CBC structures exist in Europe, which all are aimed at diminishing and separating effects of state borders, developing mutual trust, maintaining peaceful coexistence, and promoting local and regional cross-border democracy and the basic rights of free movement across the borders. When creating the legal framework for the establishment of cross-border bodies and structures, the European Union enabled us to lay the basis for peaceful encounters where the different ethnic groups have the opportunity to get to know each other better, to work together on their shared future, which are the basic conditions for mutual trust and respect. It is very important to emphasize that without open borders, without the guarantee of free movement, and without the CBC contributing to stronger cohesion, the European project loses its sense. However, as always, the recent crisis also gives us the opportunity to think through where we are, what we achieved so far, what values are important for us, how to keep these values alive, and what kind of vision can we design for the future generations. CESCI gladly takes part in this designing process, and we are privileged to pursue closer ties with our respectable partners, the MOT and Association of European Border Regions. I am convinced that thanks to the work done in the European Union, and regardless of the negative effects of the three most recent crises of the European Union, namely the migration and security crisis, the COVID pandemic situation, as well as the Russian invasion of southern Ukraine this year, we can continue to build a peaceful and respectful community of the European nations for the new generations. Thank you for your attention and cooperation. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, cher Christian, chers amis de la grande famille de la coopération.
Chairman Christian, dear members of the family of cross-border cooperation in Europe,
Permettez-moi tout d'abord
ladies and first of all, allow me to say that I'm particularly delighted to be here with you this morning in order to discuss the future and the significance of cross-border cooperation, and the fact that we are in a hall that bears the name of one of the founders of the European Union should inspire us and enable us to take part in this spirit at the time, which was extraordinary and which is sometimes absent today. And I think in order to recast the European Union, it has to become a true success story, because without the European Union, our role on this planet will be even less important perhaps than it is today. The only chance for Europe is to unite and to be strong together. And cross-border regions, of course, have a significant role to play in this respect, because the European continent is slightly larger than Australia. And of course, it has the greatest border density. And these borders play a significant role. They have in the past, they continue to do so today, and certainly in the future, increasingly. And even if on occasions in our capitals, we consider that what happens at the borders of our countries is somewhat marginal, because even in Brussels, the capital of Belgium and the EU, in truth, there is a true change in paradigm. Border regions are not marginal. They are really at the core of the European project, because we need to recognize these borders in the dual sense of the word. We need to cross those borders, go beyond them, and make sure also that they are a powerful tool for cooperation in these living areas, which are close to the heart of our chair. And in this respect, we need all to cooperate. And this is why I'm particularly delighted of this MOT, CESCI and AFE initiative that was taken in October of last year to formalize even more our cooperation that existed before, of course, and to make it go further in order to reinforce the impact of cross-border cooperation. And the declaration that we prepared for today is in this spirit and will render even more transparent and tangible our objectives. And I'm sure that these two coming days will be very important, in particular, since at last we're able to meet face to face. And I have to say that I've hated video conferences over the last couple of years, particularly when we have to discuss very important issues and to exchange information. Of course, sometimes virtual meetings are fine, but on most occasions, I think we've realized that we could have got rid of these video conferences without losing too much. But to be together as we are today, to be able to look each other in the eye and make sure that things are changing in Europe, well, nothing can replace this sort of face-to-face meeting. And it is in this spirit that I wish us all two very constructive and productive days. Thank you so much.